What? A polymer frame, striker fired 9mm handgun in this shop? Yeah, we're gonna do one of these because we have to have one of them on record. Let's take a polymer framed, striker fired 9mm gun apart, talk about how it works, clean it. This particular example is 250,000 documented rounds through it at an indoor range. So we'll see whether or not there's any wear on it, whatever, we're gonna look. Because as Matthew Quigley said, just because I don't like using them doesn't mean I don't know how they work. Down the rabbit hole, let's go. I've never taken one of these apart, so this is going to be a learning experience for me as well as for you. That will come off the top. And then I believe the concept of this gun was that it's modular, and we can take this entire inside out in one piece and change the bottom, change the grip frame on it. Hang on a minute there. I believe that comes out. And the entire bottom of the gun should just lift out for me. Or is there a lever right here? Well, we can see here right at the beginning what we're up against. All I do is I have the takedown lever out of the gun and the whole thing is messed up here. So I don't really know if this comes forward. It does. So this particular gun, the entire thing is modular and it's filthy. I have a plan for that. Life is too short to work on dirty equipment. So the story on this piece of equipment is this thing's been running at an indoor range on the other side of town. And this particular gun, not on this cleaning, has about 250,000 rounds through it. They actually keep track of how much wear they're putting on stuff. Now, I haven't taken this thing apart yet because I'm going to tell you I've never been in one. You were looking at my initial time ever having been down inside of a polymer frame, striker fired, single action, only auto reset handgun. Never been in one. So let me just get most of the gack off this. Boy, that's a lot better, isn't it? I think that looks a lot better. So now we can start talking about what does what, little things that move. We're going to find our triangle that adds up to 180 degrees. We're going to look at where, where the sear is, which I believe is right there. We'll blow all this up, don't worry about it. And how this all interrelates. All right, I didn't turn the air compressor on, so I'm going to do that and we'll be right back. Be careful when using compressed air that you don't send plungers and springs and things flying all over the place. You really don't want to do that. So scuzzing through this, I see a bar that moves when we pull on the trigger. I see that bar lifts up on this edifice right here, and that appears to move an interlock out of the whip in the slide that we'll look at. And then when you get the interlock out of the way, this part here drops down. So this is our number 3 point right here, right? This pin right here is our number 1 pivot. There's our number 3 point, and on the bottom of the slide, yeah, right there, that looks an awful lot like the back end of the plunger right there. So that's our number 1 motion. I'm sorry, the number 1 was in a sear. This is the number 2, and then the number 3 is where this is. draw all that out in a little bit. Let's take this thing apart and see how we got. I think you push in on this and drop this down. Okay, we drop that down, and we do that without ejecting the contents of the gun across the room. We got a spring there, and that means then the entire fire control cassette comes out on our hand. Barrel comes out, and yeah, this thing is scrody. Woo! But it's not that gacked on dirt that you're used to seeing. It's not really dirt. It's all powder residue. These guys at this indoor range, they take pretty good care of their stuff because their livelihood, not necessarily their ability to stay alive, but their livelihood depends upon their equipment working when people would typically like to do something like rent it for a profit or something. Okay. So just let me get this off of here. Okay, and now I got that kind of cleaned up. There is a safety in this fire control group here that says this has to be lifted up in order for the striker to come all the way forward. And if that's reset like that, that says if the trigger is not pulled, this is not allowed to access the breech face. Pretty good. It's an interesting interlock. They've cut a lot of holes in this thing in order to make it a lot lighter. Mass is your enemy. On anything that moves, mass is your enemy. So the difference between this gun with the striker that moves about 300,000ths of an inch to touch the breech face, and say like a Steyr Mannlicher where it's got to move 1.5 inches, yeah, that's where some of your lock time comes from. This particular unit is very modular. And you have to look at a couple of things that you need. So if you flip this over, this is going to sit right here like that, and there is an interlock that says if I push up on this, I have the ability to allow the firing pin to go the rest of the way. So if this is out of the way, this can do that, but if it's not, you'll hear it click and it'll lock in. So we will activate that by lifting that lever, the only lever that you can see moving right here. We'll pull this, and this basic functionality is on every gun, every semi-automatic you're going to run into. There's going to be some sort of thing that says my finger's on the trigger. And then if you go the rest of the way and you look here, you can actually see the sear falling. Now, there have been an enormous number of videos that have been done with this gun torn all the way apart, and I don't need to take it apart to talk about what I want to talk about here. Which is the fact that there is an interlock that says my finger has to be on a trigger. Now, what happens if you put the gun together without this in here, and you can do it? If you remove this piece, you don't have that secondary safety. But who removes that piece? Did this piece of equipment remove it, or did a human being either A, forget to put it in, or B, leave it out on purpose, right? Because they're going for that there quality trigger pull. No, you don't want a quality trigger pull. Yeah. So this piece right here hooks on that piece right there, and the gun is stored. When a slide comes back forward again, there's your spring force. So if you lift up on this, that'll go forward, you see. So there it is. Our number one, the sear pivot, is that pin right there. The number two, this is the part we're holding back, right? And then number three is where they all meet, right there. See where that all meets? So then, if you have, I'm going to put a little bit of tension on this, okay? A little bit of tension, and you pull the trigger, that will pop forward, you see, and there it is. So a lot of people are saying that this is a double action only gun, but unlike a Glock, when you pull a trigger on a Glock, it actually drags the firing pin back probably 80% of the way. I don't know. In this particular gun, in order to get a nice quality trigger pull, when the thing is cocked, the striker is all the way back, and all you do is release it and go. So that was my contention, that this is a single action automatic reset gun. It's not a double. If you drop it and it doesn't go off, you've got to rack the gun and drop a life round out. Viewed from underneath, viewed from underneath here. Let's get the light shining right on it. You have trigger bar motion here, right? So the trigger bar is pulling up on that interlock, the part on the bottom, and then if you go a little bit further, it pulls down on the steer. Every malfunction of every piece of equipment, every machine ever made by man, there's always a human in the loop. Human beings, with their brain housing group stored in the rectal position, do things. But I've never actually seen a machine do something incorrect unless it was not maintained the right way. Human in the loop. Incorrectly operated. Human in the loop. Wrong ammunition. Human in the loop. The machine does not get to pick which dumb human it's got to work for. Never underestimate the destructive power of stupid people in really large groups. So you might ask, why the Arisaka? Well, let's take a look at the bolt on that and the bolt on this, right? There's a projection that sticks down. And when you close this bolt, the cocking piece comes up on a trigger. And let me roll this around a little bit here so you can see me doing that. The cocking piece rolls on a trigger. The cocking piece stays all the way back. So you see this? That's us actually cocking the hammer. And then the gun goes in the lockup, because in this particular case, the barrel pivots up and locks the whole thing, right? 96 Mauser. You push this bolt shut. You gotta get the floor plate down. You push this bolt shut, and the cocking piece sits up on a trigger, see? If you have the trigger pulled, it doesn't, and it locks shut. This particular gun, as the slide comes back forward, the sear grabs right there. You can see where that hook grabs. And then the slide comes the rest of the way forward. The barrel pivots up and the gun locks shut. So this semi-automatic striker fired handgun and this bolt action rifle from, good Lord, 130 years ago work the same way. This particular setup has nothing that says that the soldier's trigger has to be, or finger has to be on the trigger. This one says that the trigger has to be up. So this one has twice the safeties. These guns have run for over 100 years in the hands of cold, tired, illiterate, sometimes, not because they were stupid, but because nobody ever taught them how to read kind of guys. This system has worked for a long time. There have been a lot of alibis with a gun like this. There have been a lot of people that have gotten hurt, but every single one of them, there was a human being in the loop. And I cannot stress enough that you cannot out of one side of your mouth say, machines don't injure people, people injure people. And then out of the other side of your mouth, same mouth, say, machines injure people. No, they don't. The common denominator is people. I just cannot stress that enough. All right, let me put this thing back together again. We'll just sit here and wait for this to go off by itself. Throughout the history of U.S. martial and non-martial firearms, I'd be willing to bet you could go back into the 1780s and dig up an ND record for one of these things. It doesn't matter how it works. How many non-zero numbers of United States soldiers picked up a Luger, didn't know how a Luger worked, and hurt themselves. In fact, I think a guy from the 101st Airborne did exactly that. Gun still hasn't gone off yet. So I don't know if you can pick up a little bit of the disdain in my voice, but what we have here is a training problem. We do not have an equipment problem. This is my opinion, but we have a training problem. We've been in the fire control group. We've had it apart. It works. The round came out of it. Who knows? 250,001. 250,002. And it did its thing, but it required me to extract my brain housing group and come back out here and operate this. Train, learn, use the proper ammunition, Keep your finger off the loud switch. As always, it's been a pleasure. Good luck. Still waiting. Still waiting.